What's up, everyone? My name's Kevin Boudreau, and in this video, I'm going to be painting a skateboard. Now, this is not just any skateboard. This is for the Alchemy Art Show, where Guru Tattoos and Zero Skateboards teamed up and made this custom deck so that a select handful of artists could paint these. Now, I'm nervous because some of these select handful of artists are my favorite artists in the world, so I obviously have to do something really nice on this board. Now, I did a very rough sanding job just to get rid of some of the clear coat that was on there. But the next step from here, I'm just gonna grab my iPad and see what I can come up with and take it from there. I started by photographing my skateboard and putting it into Procreate on my iPad Pro. I wanted to create a theme for this skateboard, and I thought it would be fun to work off of Alice in Wonderland, but more of like a skater vibe, maybe kind of like punk rock, just something fun for the viewer with a little bit of edge to it. I had a lot of fun with the layout of this skateboard, and I couldn't wait to start painting, but before I did, I had to prep my board. I started by brushing a little bit of gesso on the board, and once the gesso was dry, I was able to sand it. I repeated this process a couple times, but on the next couple of times, I mixed a little bit of light teal into the gesso. I figured it would help to have a base and kind of assist in the background because the background was actually going to be kind of like a sky blue and then go into a little bit of plant life at the bottom. And now that the board was smooth and dry, I figured it would be time to project my image onto it to make it easier. Once the image was lined up on the skateboard, I was able to trace it using an acrylic paint marker. Once the paint marker was dry, I put the skateboard on the desk. I put a hoodie under the skateboard to help make sure it didn't wobble as much, and then it was finally time to paint. For this project, I used golden fluid acrylics. As usual, I started by laying in my background, and from there, I would work up a lot of layers to eventually get to the foreground. Everything was going smooth, and I couldn't wait to bring the skateboard to life. For a brief moment, I thought it might be easier to put the skateboard upright again on my easel, but that didn't last long. I tend to enjoy when I can paint flat or at least on just a slight angle so that I have anchor points for my arms or hands, just somewhere to kind of plant myself so that everything is a little more balanced and easier to execute the details. It's obviously much different when I'm doing graffiti because my graffiti or my murals that I'm using spray paint for require my entire body, whether I'm climbing on a ladder or doing huge swoops with my arm in a certain motion or, getting down on, the ground to get to the lower portions. You're moving around more. So when I paint canvas, or I guess the skateboard, we should say, I like to make sure I'm comfortable. I like to set myself up in a nice seated position and know that I'm going to be there for a while. So it's important to make sure you're set before you start executing your project. You may also notice that one of the things I do during my process is I like to just make sure I put maybe like a mid-tone of the color. Whatever color is going to be the most of in that section, I like to just base that tone. And from there, I just create a lot of contrast using lighter tones and darker tones until you work up different values to create more of a dimensional piece. Once you have your foundation, it's much easier to just add the layers and become way more detailed with your work. It's almost like sculpting. You mold like a basic shape, and from there, you just kind of work in the details. I always tend to have a lot of fun with tiny details, things like the little cupcake tattoo that I put on her cheek. And it's important that, even though I did it with more of a gray, I went back in and glazed some skin tone over it because you want it to give that tattoo effect where it's under the skin. It's actually in the skin, not on top of the skin. It's not painted on her cheek. You want to think about things like how the light would actually hit the cheek, and maybe even the fact that, it's more faint because she might be wearing makeup. Things like that. Those little details help tell the story a lot more. I think for me, some of those portions of painting are the most fun portions, just the little tiny details and additions to help bring it to life.
and tell more of the story. I think for me, my favorite personal thing in art is probably sketching, because you're just taking an idea that doesn't exist in reality on paper or canvas or anything yet, and you're creating it. You're putting what's in your head onto paper and making it a reality. And from there, painting it is just kind of secondary. It's where you can there's still a thought process, obviously, but it's more meditating to just kind of color inside the lines and create dimension. But I gotta say, I think sketching for me, the foundation of art, just sketching is so much fun. But, seeing a finished colored full piece like this, obviously the whole end idea is what it's all about. Also, random side note, when I was talking about meditation and being kind of like a therapeutic exercise to just paint, I noticed while I was doing this painting, I did not listen to anything. I didn't have anything going as background. There was no TV. There was no music. It was literally me sitting in my basement studio just going at this painting, which isn't really too typical. I do like some kind of background noise, but it was nice to just shut everything off and not have anything but just silence and me in the skateboard. Very random for me, but like I said, I did find it very meditating. And let me know in the comments, is there something you guys prefer? Do you have like audiobooks playing in the background? Do you have maybe music going, or your favorite movies that you've seen maybe 100 times just playing in the background? I typically have music, but I think it would be nice to maybe put some old movies on that I've seen so many times that I could just kind of still turn my brain off, but have background noise that's entertaining and comfortable for me. I think one of the things that was just lingering over my head while I was doing this skateboard was the fact that this show was so important to me, because there was a lot of my favorite artists in this show, and I couldn't wait to see what they came up with. I was hoping to meet some of them, and I just knew that this was going to be a big deal. So I wanted to make sure that I did the absolute best job I possibly could. Obviously, when I'm just zoned in on the painting, my brain starts thinking different things and going in different directions. One of the things I kept thinking is the skateboard going to sell? Is someone going to show up to this event that really wants to buy this skateboard? I've sold some of my original pieces, like more of my sketches and things like that, but I haven't really sold a lot of my bigger, expensive paintings that take me a lot of time. So I was very curious to see, would this piece sell? And we're going to find out at the end of this video. Another thing that I kept thinking is, since this event was put on with Jamie Thomas, the owner of Zero Skateboards, and Guru Tattoo, are there going to be other pro skateboarders there? And then I saw in the lineup that Steve Caballero was going to be there. And he not only is a pro skateboarder, but also was painting a board for the show. And spoiler alert, I did not talk to Steve Caballero or Jamie Thomas when I got to the event. There were so many people, and there were so many different groups of people talking, and I didn't end up getting around to it. I didn't want to interrupt people's conversations. I did meet some people. I'm going to show you some clips of the show later, but who knows, maybe someday I'll do something cool in the skateboard industry, live my childhood dream, maybe design some skateboards for a pro skater someday. We'll see. I think it's important to definitely stay positive in this industry, but not set too many expectations. It's so easy to get swept away in these dreams and thoughts about, this would be so cool, this would be so cool. And if it doesn't happen, it can be very defeating. For me, personally, I always think about, making these pieces and, when they sell, I'm going to be so happy. But sometimes things don't work out like that. And there's days that I'm sitting there thinking, what's the point? I have so many canvases just sitting in my house that I've created without homes. And, people could say things like, oh, they're too expensive. But you put so much time in, you want to get what they're worth, the time that you put in. You want to find that right buyer that's going to appreciate owning one of your pieces. But yeah, there's days where it's defeating. Things don't happen so easily. But let me know if you're an artist and you go through that. Definitely share in the comments. And on that note, when I said, what's the point certain days if things aren't selling? Well, for me, I can't stop. I look forward to doing art and creating something every single day. Any mistake I've made on this journey has just been a learning point and something that makes me want to do better in the next piece. And if you're watching at home thinking, man, I'd love to own one of his pieces, well, I've got good news. You can always just go to my website, kbuart.com. Here, I've got plenty of original artwork as well as prints of my artwork. There's some t-shirts. I've got some sticker packs. So be sure to check it out and maybe pick yourself up something. I'm constantly updating the site, so be sure to check and maybe see something new that you might want to own yourself. Anyways, back to the board that we are almost done with, but we are not almost done with this video because I want to show you all the skateboards that I was able to try to record while I was at the show. There was so much going on, but like I said, I'm going to show you some clips later, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But for now, it's one of my favorite portions of my characters. I always say it, I love doing the eyes because that to me is the life of the character. I always try to save that for the end and just bring the character to life. I wasn't sure if I should do like a glowy green. I always kind of like that, but I thought adding another little green iris and pupil in the eye would just kind of create this like ghostly eye look to him. And I felt like it fit with his punk rock look, his little mohawk and face tattoos or paintings or markings on him. It just kind of, to me, sealed the whole deal. And after a couple little final touches, there's really only one thing left to do to this board, and that is to varnish it. Don't mind the other piece that's next to it. I figured I'd varnish both at once. Now we got to get to the show, so let's go to San Diego. San Diego was great. I saw some good old friends, stayed at a resort, had some fun, but let's get over to Wicked West and see what this show is all about. I had no idea what to expect, but they had a DJ, they had all these walls built, they even had tattooing going on, they had some other things inside the building that I forgot to record, but as promised, here's as many of the boards as I could record. You could see Guru Tattoo put so much work into this show with the layout, the way that they set everything up. It was definitely an awesome show. I'm pretty sure I got them all, but I am so sorry if I missed any. Also, I apologize that I did not have the time to attach everyone's name to the artwork. With the way they had these walls set up, it was almost like a maze to kind of navigate between, and I was doing my best to try to not get some of the spectators on camera. Now, I believe all of the skateboards will be posted somewhere on Guru Tattoo's site. They told me that they were going to sell the ones online that did not sell at the show. I'm also pretty sure I was told there was 97 boards that were entered in this show. That is a lot of skateboards for an art show. So I did a little research, and out of the 97 skateboards, I believe less than 10 sold during the show. However, that should not be a reflection on this show. Times are tough. And there is a lot of talent at this show, meaning these boards are not cheap. But I will say it definitely made me feel better when my board did not sell at the show. Now, that was a huge bummer, I'm not gonna lie, but as I said earlier, you have to learn in this industry to not have expectations. You gotta keep your head up and keep moving on. Wait a sec, is that a Crayola?
I bought it!
That's right, guys. I own a piece of art from one of my favorite artists, Greg Simpkins, aka Crayola. I am so stoked to own this piece. I did not get to meet him at the show, but we have talked online after, and I gotta say, he's a really nice guy. Now, in other news, my board is still available, so if you'd like to purchase this, you could find it on my website, kbuart.com, and also be sure to check out Guru Tattoo because I believe, as I said, they are going to be selling all the boards on their site. I want to give a special thank you to Guru Tattoo and Zero Skateboards for making this whole thing happen. It was a crazy experience. I am so glad I got to walk away with this and be a part of the show. And like I said, if you'd like to own this, it is still available. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.